So here's from The Intercept. It says swing district Democrats link with progressives to back paycheck bill Pelosi rejected. So this story is going to be about how the progressives are finally, after all their leverage is gone, finally trying to do something. Finally. So here, let's go through it, and then we'll have Ron come in and comment on it. After House Speaker Nancy Pelosi excluded a plan to keep unemployment down by subsidizing firms to keep workers on payrolls from her relief package last week, dozens of progressives have banded together with 10 frontline Democrats from swing districts to introduce it as a standalone piece of legislation. So this, by the way, so her idea, Pramila Jayapal's idea, which is this paycheck protection, instead of giving people unemployment, give them paycheck protection. They do versions of that around the world right now, working much better. We just covered it. Go watch the video. We just covered yesterday how Germany is saving their jobs. So they're making sure that you don't have to get fired or lay off and then go on unemployment and fill out those papers. They just make sure that the business is solvent, and they just make sure that you get your paycheck. And so when we lift the thing, you go right back. And there's no unemployment. That's how Germany's handling it in other countries. We're not handling it that way. Nancy Pelosi's big idea is let you get laid off or fired, and then we're going to give you unemployment insurance, and you got to go to a website that's crashing, that can't handle it, and then you go back, and then we're going to handle money to the Small Business Administration, except big businesses were getting the money instead of small business. So it's a crazy way to do it. But that's how Nancy Pelosi wants to do it. The Paycheck Recovery Act, authored by Representative Pramila Jayapal, Democrat from Washington, aims to make sure that paychecks are flowing from employers to workers that's what I just explained to you. A previous version, the Paycheck Guarantee Act, had been a priority of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, of which Jayapal is a co-chair. The bill subsidizes struggling companies' payrolls in order to discourage layoffs and keep unemployment down. So, for instance, the way Germany's handling it, the more of the way Pramila Jayapal wants us to handle it, their unemployment rate 4%. 4% right now. Our unemployment rate, well, it was 15% last time we checked, but we all know it's somewhere closer to 25% right now. Okay. While Pelosi had said she was open to considering the idea, she ultimately kept it out of the HEROES Act, the thing about the paycheck guarantee. She kept it out of the coronavirus relief bill passed by the House on Friday, which includes an extension of unemployment subsidies. Jayapal confronted Pelosi on a private caucus conference call over the decision. And Pelosi, that's very helpful. It would be more helpful if you did it publicly. That would be real helpful, really super duper helpful. And Pelosi aides later pushed back, criticizing, Pramila Jayapal has a better idea. She pushes back against Nancy Pelosi on a private caucus meeting, and then Nancy Pelosi's aides come back and say that Pramila is out of line. And why? Well, because the official legislative, she didn't have official legislative text or, get this, Republican co-sponsors. So if you want to do something for the American people, you have to first get a Republican to agree with you before Nancy Pelosi will do something about it. That's stunning. Keep that in mind.
That's leadership.
That's
Doesn't that sound like leadership to you? I mean, that's just... I know like people have tweeted this before. Like I've seen people tweet stuff like this. When have you ever heard Mitch McConnell do anything like that? When have you ever heard Mitch McConnell go, well, I don't know what my Democratic colleagues will think about this, so I don't know if we can do this horrible thing I want to do. That's never, ever happened in the history of ever.
That's a great point, Ron. That's exactly right. No, can you imagine? Well, I'd like to get some some protection for corporations, but you don't have a Democratic sponsor.
Obama might get mad if we just steal a Supreme Court pick. Maybe I shouldn't do it.
Great point. All right, so that's Nancy Pelosi's litmus test. You have to have a Republican. What is the point of the Democrats taking over the House if you can't do anything unless you first get a Republican to agree with it? The stampede of frontliners towards Jay Appel's new bill. By the way, that term frontliners, we're going to explain it in a second.
Oh, good.
I'm still not completely clear on what the hell she means. Do you know what she means by frontliners completely?
I do not know.
Okay, all right. So this,
no, because I read through that article too, and I was wondering that.
I read it twice, and I'm trying to figure. So the stampede of frontliners toward Jay Appel's new bill, according to people involved in the negotiations, is driven by, I love this, an intersection of policy and electoral concerns. Everybody likes to fucking say that right now, right? I reside in the intersection between politics and the intersectionality of the intersection. I'm at a four-way stop. How about that? I'm at it. There's a blinking yellow. Anyway, so there. All right. So the frontliners are concerned that Pelosi's rejection of the paycheck bill and her focus on unemployment. Now, get this. They say it makes for poor politics. No kidding? You mean raising the unemployment rate is bad politics? Yes, it is.
What if she calls Trump a doo-doo head? Does that change anything? What are we dealing with then?
What if she says he's a fatso? Yeah, well, Trump's a big fatso. So they say Pelosi doing it this way, emphasizing unemployment instead of keeping people's jobs, is poor politics, and they have complained that they are getting hammered at home by Republicans who are dubbing Democrats the party of unemployment. So the Democrats' idea is not to keep people's jobs. Their idea is to just give them unemployment when their jobs go away, which makes everything harder to start back up. And now the Republicans in swing districts are hammering Democrats, calling them the party of the unemployment, because they are. The alliance of swing district Democrats and the progressive wing of the party. So what's happening is swing district Democrats, which are moderates. So if I showed you the other day the HEROES Act, the people who voted against it, they were all moderates and swing except for Pramila Jayapal. She was the only progressive to vote against the HEROES Act and try to stick it to Nancy Pelosi. Why would the moderates do that in swing districts? Because they're getting hammered by Republicans because Republicans are easily out-lefting them. That's why. That's how bad the Democrats are. They can move to their left and say, look, the Democrats want you to lose your job before they help you. We're going to keep your job. So the alliance of swing district Democrats and the progressive wing of the party represents a new threat to House Democratic leadership's domination of the caucus. Because of the stark partisan divide in the House, Pelosi can't rely on the few remaining moderate Republicans to push legislation over the top. Instead, leadership typically shapes legislation to appeal to the swing district bloc of Democrats. There are 42 frontliners who the party considers in need of electoral protection. So frontliners, I'm just going to guess that this means people in swing districts who are vulnerable. Is that a frontliner? People up for re-election in swing districts? I don't know what that means. But that's what I'm going to guess. And is that, then Ron doesn't know either stuff.
Yeah, it sounds right.
It's weird they never explained that in an article. And Ron, me, and Steph, we absorb politics 24 hours a day, and we have no idea what that means.
So what I see, one frontline definition is a person or thing that is part of a leading position.
Okay. So there are 42 frontliners who the party considers in need of electoral protection. Then bludgeons progressives into supporting. Okay, so leadership typically shapes legislation to appeal to swing district bloc of Democrats, then bludgeons progressives into supporting it, arguing that whatever is being offered is better than nothing, and promotes the necessary goal of maintaining the majority, without which progressives have no power at all. So they say, look, we're never going to give you progressive legislation. We're only going to give you legislation that appeals to the people who are in swing districts. And why? Because we need to keep those swing districts in order to maintain our majority power. And so progressives get fucked always, and the swing district moderates get everything. Do you see how that works? And that will be that way forever inside the Democratic Party. Okay? Forever. Do you see why Nancy Pelosi lives in San Francisco and she legislates like she lives in Houston? That's why. Because she's always legislating towards the swing district. Efforts by progressives to organize enough no votes to extract leverage in negotiations over coronavirus relief has so far not come to fruition. But teaming with frontliners opens up a new potential strategy as the pandemic scrambles political calculations. So here's our Representative Tom Suozzi, a Democrat from Long Island, moderate, and a moderate member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, is co-sponsoring Jay.
Oh, they're really failing right now.
Boy, are they. Right.
What problems have they solved?
First of all, again, that's another thing. I consume politics and news 24 hours a day. I've never heard of this. Have you ever heard of the Problem Solvers Caucus, Ron?
I think there's a segment on CNN dedicated to them, but I missed it somehow.
Okay.
No, it's like whoever hears about that. Hey, what's the Problem Solvers Caucus up to? Look that up for me.
I thought that's what Congress was.
That's what
in essence.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that their job?
Right? That's their
Solving
job.
problems on a national level. That's kind of what the federal government is supposed to be for.
I think the problem solvers get together and appoint a task force, right? Isn't that how that works?
Yeah, they appoint a task force or they appoint a focus group to see if they need a task force.
Yeah, and then maybe a commission that would study
exactly.
it. They would study the results of the focus groups. Yeah.
To determine a task force.
To determine what kind of task force, because you got to know what you need before you appoint a task force.
You rinse and repeat.
Yeah, you got to look, we need John Kerry on our task force.
That's a guy who's on top of it.
We need Eric Holder on our task force for criminal justice reform, because even though he was, the head of the criminal justice system, he never did anything when he had power. But now he's going to be on a task force.
What's the problem we're solving today? Climate change? I got just the guy. You say climate change, I say dude who lost to George W. Bush. We got this.
So the moderate member of the Problem Solvers, Tom Suozzi from Long Island, is co-sponsoring Jayapal. So do you see what's happening? What's obvious to everyone, what needs to be done, what should be done, the Democrats just won't do it. And now here are moderates saying, I actually like to get reelected, so I'm actually going to try and help people. That's what's going on. Moderates are joining progressives going, it's time we actually help people because I actually want to get reelected. And so that's why he's co-sponsoring Jayapal's legislation. He says, I think the most persuasive argument is that state unemployment systems are ill-equipped to handle the volume of claims, and that will not be rectified in the near future. He's absolutely right about that. And he says helping people by having more folks on unemployment is not the answer. And he's absolutely right about that, too. It's really not even political. Like, it's not left, right, progressive, moderate, conservative, libertarian. It's just like your car's out of gas, you put gas in the car. That's not political. It's like, so look how Germany's doing it. We just look at the video we did yesterday, and they're not the only country doing it, but it's the best example. They're doing a version of what Jayapal's calling to do, and it's obvious they should do that. So, additionally, PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, which is meant to help small businesses keep their payroll going, it has too many big small businesses that don't need the help. This bill seems more effective and more targeted. So that's the moderate still talking. So he's saying exactly what we said earlier, that the Paycheck Protection Program, which is meant to help small businesses, actually didn't because too many big businesses scammed in on that dough. Okay. The CARES Act, that's the big ultimate screwing that everybody voted for 96-0 in the House. That was in late March, 96-0 in the Senate, and that's the one that set me off. The CARES Act, the multi-trillion-dollar relief package, which is also could be called the largest upward transfer of wealth in the history of humankind, which is what it is. The CARES Act, the multi-trillion-dollar relief package. Let me also tell you what this is like. The CARES Act, as Dylan Radigan put it on this show, what they did there was like if your car ran out of gas, everybody knows you're supposed to put gas in the car. It's not political. Instead, what our Congress did and the president was instead of showing up and putting gas in the tank, they showed up, stole the tires off the car and ripped the radio out and took off. That's what the CARES Act did, okay? That's what Bernie voted for. Elizabeth Warren voted for. Sherrod Brown voted for it, 96-0. So the CARES Act, the multi-trillion-dollar relief package, the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history that was passed in late March, took the route of subsidizing unemployment by providing workers who had been recently laid off with an extra $600 in unemployment benefits for 4 months. The HEROES Act, that's the one they just passed, includes an extension of those benefits until January 2021. But Pramila Jayapal says mass unemployment is a policy choice. You're choosing to do this. And we must choose differently, she says. Jayapal said that Tuesday, introducing the Paycheck Recovery Act. Get this, Republican Senator Josh Hawley joined a handful of Democrats and has sponsored a similar piece of legislation in the Senate, a Republican. The politics of fighting on behalf of jobs is an obvious winner, says Republican Josh Hawley. So this isn't Chuck Schumer introducing this. This is a goddamn Republican out-lefting the Democrats like that. So the politics of fighting on behalf of jobs is an obvious winner, and Hawley is hoping to exploit Democrats' failure to do so in an election year. Let me read that again. He's hoping to exploit Democrats' failure to what? To fight for jobs. And what is it? It's an obvious winner. And Democrats won't even fight for you know what else is an obvious winner? Medicare for all. Democrats won't do Medicare for all. An obvious winner. 90% of Democrats favor it. 70% of Republicans favor it. What the F? Some Republicans, Politico reported, see an opportunity to get the upper hand on jobs and the economy after the Democratic House proposal omitted Jayapal's paycheck guarantee. The Senate Republicans are more progressive than the Democrats in the House. Get that in your head. Nancy Pelosi is to the right of Republican senators. We should put forward a proposal that is focused on jobs in contrast to what House Democrats are doing. This is the Republican talking. They're going to put forward a proposal that is focused on jobs in contrast to what the House Democrats are doing. They could have done something like this. They had the opportunity to put forward a jobs proposal, and they didn't, Hawley said. It's unbelievable that you would propose a $3 trillion in federal spending and you wouldn't have a focus on workers. That's a senator who's a Republican slapping the piss out of Nancy Pelosi. And it's easy to do. Easy to do. All you have to do is adopt obvious winning issues, protecting people's jobs. Nancy Pelosi won't do it. And she won't give you health care. And if you keep voting for Democrats, you're going to die alone in a puddle of your own urine. How about that? Ron, what do you have to say about this story?
Well, I like how when they were talking about how Nancy Pelosi is sort of like alone now, that all could have been summed up as, look, Nancy Pelosi really wants to keep being super shitty. But some of her colleagues are like, hey, if we keep being this shitty, we're going to lose our jobs and we don't want to do that. So now Nancy Pelosi might not be able to be as shitty. She's still doing it anyway, but she might not be able to too much longer. Maybe 10 bills from now, she won't be able to be as shitty. Because, I mean, this is something... This conversation should have been had first. I mean, at the first.
Yes, Ron, you're exactly right. And Juan, why didn't they have this conversation? And why isn't anyone? Well, I understand the corporate news media is never going to hold Nancy Pelosi's feet to the fire or anybody for anything. But, I mean, did you see when Jake Tapper, he actually did say to Nancy Pelosi, well, now you've given all your leverage away. Is that smart? And she spanked him and said, calm down. Remember that? She said, calm.
I missed that. I did not see that, actually.
She said, calm down. We have a plan. Well, we saw your plan. It sucks. A Republican senator just out-lefted your fucking plan, Nancy Pelosi. Just like that. So, yes, Ron, that's exactly right. They're saying, hey, Nancy, you can't be this shitty and still expect us to be reelected. So you're going to have to be a little less shitty.
I want to weigh in here a little bit. So yesterday, we happened to be watching all of these late night shows. So, I kind of watch the late night shows because I can't believe that the late night shows are still on.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe that they're still producing this like really base quality of content. And when I was watching Seth Meyers last night, I couldn't get over there was 20 minutes of Trump bashing. I am no fan of Trump, but in the midst of the Democrats failing the American people,
to focus on the village idiot is malfeasance, malpractice. It's malpractice. And I mean, I like Seth Meyers because I like my comedy from a mannequin. But don't you? Come on. Hi, I'm Seth Meyers. I am not an automaton. I actually have emotions. It will come. You'll see it in my face in a second. See? Anyway, and they're speeding through their, anyway.
Well, let me just point out one thing about the late night shows. So a lot of them are doing segments on how to help fellow Americans.
Right.
So they're doing all this. This is a fundraiser.
There's a charity and a charity and a charity.
Exactly. In the meantime, they're not examining how the Democrats have completely ripped off Americans.
Completely. To me, that's the interesting jokes to write. That's the interesting story to tell. Everybody knows Trump's the village idiot. He's the symptom of the corruption of the Democratic Party. And of course, that's the story that never gets told. Literally, we were watching Seth Meyers last night. He didn't spend 5 minutes making fun of Trump. He didn't spend 10 minutes making fun of Trump. He didn't spend 15. He spent a solid 20 minutes, if not longer even. I turned it off eventually. I kept it going just because it was stunning. He would do, here's another segment, and the segment was all about Trump. I'm like, well, here's another segment. We'll see what this is. A whole nother segment just about Trump. And it's off-putting, and it's lazy, and that's exactly what the news media is. That's lazy comedy. That's mindless, low-hanging fruit. And you don't deserve to have a show. Those people, those late night hosts, do not deserve to have a show. Have you watched those shows, Ron, at all?
I have not watched much late night at all.
Oh, you're missing it.
Well, every now and again, I do like the fact that Bill Maher is shooting his show out of his backyard, because I just think if some kid walked by and he yelled at the kid to get off his lawn, it would be poetically perfect. That's the only thing I like.
Yeah, but his backyard is surrounded by he's got the electronic wire.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
And sound cannons. He's got it. Come on. He where does he live? He got to live in Bel Air.
Probably. Yeah.
I doubt he lives in the Hollywood Hills. I bet he's in Bel Air. So anyway, there it is. You're right. And even till this day, I don't know what your experience is, but my experience is that that not only the corporate news is not telling people what's going on and what's happening with the coronavirus relief packages. They're not really telling people what's going on, or what they're missing is what should be going on. That's the part the news media is not telling them. They're also not telling them what's coming. They're also not telling them what other countries are doing.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Because you mentioned Germany. England is doing something similar too.
Yes, they are.
Where I believe it's 80% of wages that they're covering, and they're just actually, whenever you hear small business in the United States, like we're going to help the small businesses. Unfortunately, that's not what they're actually planning to do. Sadly, that's just a dog whistle to say, hey, big corporations, we got some more cash for you. Because they try to make it out like this triple P thing was like, oh, these big businesses were just taking advantage. No, you set it up that way.
Yes.
Because you defined on what a quote-unquote small business was, which they defined that very loosely. So who's going to get all this money on a first-come, first-served basis? The quote-unquote small business that's not a small business at all, but has a team of lawyers working around the clock so their application is in there the second it goes live? Or the actual small business who's worried about their employees and probably has a family and is doing this all on their own? Who's going to get that money? I think we all know the answer to that. They set that up by design.
And they set the money to go through the banks. So who do the banks take care of? They take care of their richest customers first.
Yep.
And everyone else, we were last in that line. And my friends who own comedy clubs, they tell me the same thing. They're last in that line. And there's a name for that. I think it might be called, it's something close to, this isn't the word, like the Condolin effect. And that means that the people who get the money first in the recovery have all the advantage, right? Because they get their money and then they start. So all the assets are devalued, right? All assets are lowered in value. So they get no one else has money in the country because the economy is literally closed. So then the government gives $5 trillion to the richest motherfuckers when no one else has money. And so then they buy everything up, and now the rest of the people are starting to get money. Well, all the shit's there's already been a fire sale. Things are so. Do you see that? So that's what's happening. Again, they're not explaining that on television. And what's even more? Go ahead, Steph.
I want to ask this. We see that there's the CARES Act,
right,
there's the Heroes Act,
right.
And so why am I getting emails from Bernie Sanders' campaign saying that before the pandemic, the economic meltdown, 87 million Americans were uninsured, and now we're talking about Medicare for all. Again, why am I getting information from a campaign that he already is endorsing Biden. And Biden
is against Medicare for all. He already said, I'm going to fucking veto it. How could you, that's so that's what a guy who's not a leader of a movement does. A leader of a movement at no point backs the problem, especially in the middle of a campaign when there's 50 states. I mean, when there's half the states left to vote. That's not what the leader of a movement does. What do you think about that, Ron?
I don't think any politician is going to lead the movement we need. And my 2020 endorsement is for general strike.
Yes, I'm with you, Ron.
Yeah, so I'm really soured on electoral politics myself.
I am too. I
mean, Ron, honestly, for me, it was the CARES Act. I'm still gobsmacked. I mean, if is that a Gen X word? I shouldn't use that word. I'm slack-jawed. Is that another one? Slack-jawed.
That works.
Gobsmacked. At the complete betrayal of the country by our government. Like what people don't understand, it's as if a foreign hostile government took over our country and fucked us. But it's not. It's our own government doing it to us. And every progressive elected went along with it, which gives cover for it. Right? That's the real sin. Not only did they not stop it, did they not try to do anything, not try to inform people what was in it, not try to mobilize people against it, not scream about, not call out their leadership, nothing. But they actually voted for it, which gives it cover. So now everybody in the country is like, well, if Bernie and 96-0, it must be good.
Well, it's actually even a little bit worse than what you just described because, the cherry on top was after that was all over, they went on vacation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And then I don't understand. I still haven't gotten a reason why the FBI bill to limit their spying, warrantless spying on Americans, it failed by one vote to stop that from happening, and Bernie wasn't there to vote on it. People say, well, Mitch McConnell pulled a fast one. He had that bill. Bernie actually is the co-sponsor of that bill with Wyden, and Mitch McConnell brought it to the floor when Bernie wasn't there. I'm like, well, where the fuck was Bernie? He's home hosting his late night talk show on YouTube about climate change. That's what he was doing that day. Like, why the fuck isn't he in the Senate right now in the middle of a calamity? I still haven't gotten an answer. Do you know, Ron?
I haven't gotten an answer on that either, and that was very disappointing. And now that bill, that amendment's in a very difficult place because it goes back to the House, and the only person who can just tack that back on is Nancy Pelosi. She has the ability to kind of just tack that amendment back on. Then it would go back to the Senate, where hopefully the people who didn't show up to vote, especially Bernie, would show up, and then it would go forward. But now we're in a situation where Nancy Pelosi has to do the right thing.
I hear Nancy Pelosi is very progressive behind closed doors. Where it doesn't matter.
Where it doesn't matter. I think that's the best place to be progressive, is behind closed doors. And then when you come in front of the doors, you completely fucking capitulate to conservatism and neocons and Wall Street. I think that's a great strategy. Well, anyway, there's this. So there it is. So there's finally the progressives have found some help from the moderates that are finally standing up against Nancy Pelosi to actually try to help people. Isn't that interesting? They're actually trying to help people. Turns out only one progressive voted against it. There were more moderates on the people's side than the progressives. What does that say to you, Ron?
It says we got a big problem, and it says that, you don't take over the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party takes over you.
Yep. 100% that happens. 100%. And so when that CARES Act passed, there were actually people in progressive news spaces referring to Bernie Sanders and other progressives as heroes, when what they really did was betray the country in the biggest way. Like, there's no way they'll ever be able to make up for it for the rest of their career. And that's what people don't understand. People don't understand what was in that bill. They don't understand what's coming. They don't understand what's happening right now. And that's why they're like, oh, Jimmy, yeah, you should criticize people, but you're a little over the top. That's because you don't understand what's happening. And if you did, you'd be screaming at the top of your lungs, too, and putting pressure on your political leaders instead of running interference for them and propaganda and excusing their complete betrayal of you at a time when they should be fighting harder than ever. Right now is when we should get Medicare for all and a UBI. Right now. That's not even political. That's not left, right, liberal again. That's just the car stopped. You got to put gas in it. It's out of gas. That's not political. We need health care for people. We need a UBI until this is over. That's not political. They're not doing it, which means they're bent on the destruction of this country. That includes the progressive elected leaders in the Congress and Senate. They are participating in the destruction of this country. They're not stopping it, even a fucking little. Finally, moderates are sticking their necks out to actually try to help people because they want to get reelected. That is insane. And anybody, like Ron said, you don't take over that, because that's what they've said. I've been a third party guy, and I argued it at the Young Turks, and Cenk Uygur was like, you got to have a D next to your name. We're going to board the ship and take it over. Well, you see what happens. You board the ship, and they fucking take your clothes off. They put a new uniform on you, and they give you fucking talking points, and you do it. That's exactly what's happened. So this idea of the Justice Democrats is a fucking failure. Failure. They completely capitulate. It's over. Their moment came and went. It's over. They had their chance. It's fucking over.
Really? You don't think somebody in Congress that takes the stand and tells everybody shame? 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 It's not going to make progress for the American public?
You mean when she only calls out the Republicans? We would be better off if we had one-party rule in this country. Because when shit doesn't happen, the Republicans blame the Democrats.
Yes.
And then the Democrats blame the Republicans. And the news media keeps reporting it that way. And we keep getting closer and closer to being Brazil. So I'm not participating. I don't even know. Ron, are you voting for Democrats anymore?
No, I mean, I can't think. I mean, especially as far as 2020 goes, I'll either vote green or I'll vote for the socialists.
So just real quick, I don't know, maybe you know, that guy Shahid who's running against Nancy Pelosi used to run as a green, and now he's running as a Democrat. What? Do you know why?
He's running as a Democrat. I don't know if he ran as a green in the past or not. I don't know about that. I have no idea. But yeah, I know he's running as a Democrat. I'd vote for him if I could, but I mean, I'm not in his district.
Yeah. I wish he wouldn't run as a Democrat. In California, you don't really need to, because there's no primary. The primary is everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would like to see that too. I'd like to see us move, especially I'm reading Thomas Frank's new book right now, and it's all about like the history of populism. Have you read it or looked at it?
It's on my coffee table. It's got the shoe with the no on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually reading a galley of it. So I'm reading it on my phone, which is something I don't typically like doing, but I don't mind it that much. It's actually been okay, but like it just goes through the history of populism, and we're seeing history repeat itself. And it's like, okay, well, so they had a chance then to really have an actual movement and an actual party that represented people. And, it kind of got co-opted through the same propaganda in the same way. And I'm just kind of reading that book and I'm like, man, I hope we win this time. I hope we actually get this done this time.
I don't see how, if it only can happen if it comes through worker strikes.
I agree. I fully agree.
That's what's got to happen. I mean, if the Instacart workers went on strike and the Ralph's workers went on strike, they would shut this country down tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that we're learning through all this. They even use the word essential workers. They use that. So look around you. See who the essential workers are. It's not the person on Wall Street. It's not the person, some venture capitalist. It's the people keeping your pharmacies open, the people keeping your grocery stores open, and the people who they're not given hazard pay anymore, but they're given a T-shirt from Jeff Bezos.
That's right.
Those are the people, and it's time to just go on strike.
I couldn't agree more. The problem is the big unions are usually corrupt, and they usually get co-opted by the people they're supposed to be fighting against. So hopefully, it's going to come from people I think like Chris Smalls, who did the UPS, the Amazon, and so that's where it's got to come. And so so we're talking about strikes. We're going to have somebody on from Hong Kong. Are you familiar with the Pulse strikes, Ron?
I'm not.
Yeah, so me neither. So that's why we're going to have her on to tell us what it's about. And they did it all over in 20 different countries. Dylan Radigan was talking about it briefly. It worked in Beirut. It worked in Hong Kong, where they would get a city of 6 million people. I get 3 million people out in the streets like that. And it's kind of like they call it a pulse. So like in France, the Yellow Vests, every Saturday they'd come out and pulse. They'd come out every Saturday. So it's always ready. It's always there. So we're going to talk more about that, because that's what needs to happen. Trying to think you're going to vote your way out of this problem, I don't think it's not even going to be a half measure.
No, it's not. And there are some reasons for I mean, you talked about Chris Smalls over at Amazon. I mean, McDonald's. I just read today about the class action suit that the workers are putting forward at McDonald's. What is it? So they're basically, they have a class action lawsuit, and they're going up against McDonald's, and they're saying, you did not provide us with adequate protection. We did not get proper, and it's so insane. The things these workers are asking for are just things that any decent human being would provide their workers. Just, hey, give us proper equipment, give us gloves, give us hand sanitizer, give us, when someone gets coronavirus, let us know. I mean, that's all. Like, people are just asking for decent, hazard pay. I mean, just obvious things that should be a no-brainer. And so, they got a class action lawsuit going, and I hope they win. And there's about, I think 20 different cities have McDonald's that are striking as we speak. So.
Oh yeah, what are you reading, Steph?
Yeah, that it says hundreds of McDonald's workers plan Wednesday strike over COVID-19 protections.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Again, the essential workers. You're right. I mean, the fast food workers, the Walmart workers, the Ralph's, where the supermarket employees, the delivery people at UPS and Instacart, they have all the power, all the power. So I think they're starting to realize it. There's lots of wildcat strikes happening. We're going to get somebody on. So.
Can I just say this? McDonald's statement released. They comment, this is from USA Today, and they say McDonald's also called it a strategically timed publicity stunt that they're organizing.
Oh, wow.
It's a publicity stunt, everybody.
Yeah, they waited for a pandemic to do this. We're striking for protections from a pandemic. Boy, that's sneaky.
Amazon released a similar statement when all that stuff was going on in Staten Island. They're like, oh, wow, this is really, look at you being all selfish, not wanting to die on the job, so you're doing something about it. What an opportunist.
And then that guy quit, that vice president quit and talked about the toxic culture over at Amazon. As you know, again, people have to go on strike just for basic protections as Jeff Bezos increases his wealth by $20 billion at the same time. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, what a time to be alive. We're on our way to getting our first trillionaire, and simultaneously people are lined up for food a la the Great Depression. What a society.
And people act like there isn't a template for how to handle this, and there is.
Mm-hmm.
And they just won't do it. Barack Obama would not do it, and he never once mentioned FDR. Have you ever heard Barack Obama mention FDR? No.
He mentioned Reagan a good bit.
All the time. All right, pull up your pants. All right, Ron Placone. What's the writer's room? You're doing that? You going to do the writer's room tonight?
Yeah. It's this project that, is happening right now because, some projects like that are able to happen in quarantine, and nothing's ready for public consumption yet. But yeah, it's this writing project I'm a part of later tonight.
Okay. All right, Ron Placone. Check him out. Get your news on with Ron.
And YouTube.com/Ron Placone.
And his big microphone.
Oh, they really like your big microphone.
People like
Ron.
that big
microphone. They really like it.
I
It's been the
appreciate
buzz, the whole chat.
Really?
Awesome.
Okay. All right, Ron. Take care. Say hi to Caitlin.
Will do, Jimmy.
The
See ya.
wife.
Well,
Okay.
bye, guys.
Bye, buddy.
Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?